Hey guys, I'm Sarah and welcome to my channel. You've probably heard it 1,000 times. To be a good writer, you must be a good reader. Now, while I don't 100% agree with the sentiment, I do believe that one of the best ways to inspire, to motivate and to grow as a writer is to read. In fact, it's one of the easiest things you can do. Today I'm going to be talking about how to read like a writer. How can you best take someone's words and use them to further your own skill? I find the best place to start is by rereading one of your books, your favourite books, one of the books that you aspire to write like, or a book you know can help you with any weaknesses that you feel you have in your own writing. Now, the first thing that you need to make sure of when you do this is that you are awake. That sounds really stupid because who reads when they're asleep? That's what writers do when they write their novels. What I mean is a lot of people tend to read a book when they're winding down for the evening, when they're in bed, when their brain is switching off a little to help them sleep. Now that's not a bad thing, but if you're going to be taking apart and analysing a story for your own benefit and for your own growth, you need to be as awake and focused as possible in order to get all of that information that you need. As you read, you can also take notes, especially if it's a long book or if you don't want to forget anything. If you're going to take notes, don't do it in the book. That makes you a monster and I will end you. There are a lot of things you can focus on when reading as a writer. You might want to focus on things that you know are your weaknesses, or you might want to focus on the entire story as a whole, especially if it's an author whose writing style you really like and you want to aspire to be able to write like them. I'm going to talk about what type of things you might want to look for and note down as you read through the book. One of the biggest things, obviously, is character. I suck at characters. I don't have the time or patience to fully flesh them out. I don't believe they need to be fully fleshed out going into writing a novel, but I do agree that other people's characters seem to be so much more likeable and interesting than my own. So what I tend to look for when I'm reading as a writer is how this character is introduced into the novel. If they're the protagonist, how do we first see them? When do we first see them? How are they described to us? How is their personality written? How does the author manage to blend all of these different characters together with their character interactions? How do they react to the plot? What do I like about them? What don't I like about them? I especially take note if it's a character who has similar traits to one of my own characters. How do they handle the negative traits, or how do they handle the positive traits, and how do they make that trade-off between the two? Another important thing to focus on with characters is the character arc. Where does the character start from? What are they like? What pushes them? What motivates them? What breaks them down? And what is the character like at the end? How have they grown? How are they different? Are they better? Are they worse? What works? What doesn't? Characters are one of the driving forces in your novel. So if you don't have good characters, despite how fantastic your plot may be, the reader is going to find it a lot more difficult to want to continue reading. So it's a very important thing to get right. And if you have fallen so deeply, madly in love with characters in a book, pay attention to how they're written, how they interact, and what endears you to them, and try and put that own spin and focus on your own characters in your own novel. Another big thing, obviously, is plot. Plot is another massive issue for me. I have a lot of issues when writing. I can't do any of it, really, it seems. There are hundreds of different ways to plot your novel. You can Google how to plot your novel, and there'll be God knows how many links and websites on what people do. You've got the zigzag method, the 3-act method, the 60 scenes method, etc., etc., etc. I find it difficult to use these because just one doesn't work for me. I have to use a combination of all. Finding a book that has sort of a similar plot to my own novels can sort of help me figure out what I need to do better than trying to read some instructions on a website. You want to see where the book starts. A lot of people start their books way too early, and some people start it too late. Take your favourite novel and see where that plot starts. How many chapters are focused on the protagonist's mundane life before something amazing happens and the plot kicks into gear? What's the hook? Where does the plot really start to draw you in? How many events are there? Is it mostly dialogue? Is it character driven? Is it more plot driven? How climactic is the midpoint? Is it that important to the overall plot itself? Or is it more character based? How does it end? Where do you end your novel after the climax has happened? These are things that there are no rules for. They can't be taught. They are personal to each and every writer. Examining how it's done in similar plots to yours can help you decide on how and when to put all of the beats into your plot. Pace is another big thing. How often or little do bad things happen or massive events that are plot related happen? Do you get bored? Note those bits down. You don't want to put those same scenes in your novel if they're boring you in someone else's. When did you get excited? How often were you kept on the edge of your seat, desperate to know what happened next? Do you feel the plot moved too fast? Too slow? These are the things that you need to pay very close attention to. If it's something that excites you, try and find a similar way to do it in your own novel. Pace is one of the things that can make or break a novel. If everything happens too fast and your readers don't have a moment to breathe, they're going to feel rushed. They're going to feel like all this information is piled onto them in order to try and create a really exciting story, but it doesn't work. Likewise, if your plot is too slow and nothing happens, you focus too much on the characters and their interactions and their growth without anything exciting happening in the background, readers can start getting a bit bored. Like, when is this going to pick up? When is the next big thing going to happen? Oh my God, are they sitting down and having another conversation? It's also important with pace to try and figure out the timeline of the novel. What length of time does the novel take place in? Is it a few days? Is it a week? Is it a month? How is it the author manages to pace that correctly so it doesn't feel like it's dragging on too long? If it's a longer novel like Harry Potter, which focuses on like an entire year at Hogwarts, or Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, which takes place in about a week. Scenes is also a really, really good one to look out for. How do the scenes start? How do they end? How do the authors add the setting and the description so you know where you are? What beats happen in that scene? How many cliffhangers to these scenes are there? Do they end naturally, or do they end sort of, that there should have been another paragraph? Scenes are basically mini chapters in your story. They should follow some sort of formula the same way that your plot does. It should have a beginning. It should contain something to do with the plot or with the characters. It can't just be a mundane conversation about the weather and school. Every single scene has to mean something and has to give something to the plot or to the characters in order for it to remain interesting and valid to the entire story itself. So in those scenes where there isn't anything exciting happening, how does the author hold your attention? What is it they do to keep you reading? Is it something interesting happening with the characters? Is it the way they're describing the scene or the way the setting is told? And then how do they end those scenes? Do they end it at a natural point in the day? Do they end it after a certain conversation? Do they end it with a character leaving the room? Do they end it with your protagonist and their inner thoughts? And you can do this with any other part of the novel that you like. You can do it with the overall structure, the climax, the midpoint, how they sort out the hooks, the dialogue that you have in it. Anything that you feel you need help with in your own novel, if you pay attention to it, you can learn from it. After you've read the book and you've taken your notes, I think the best way to process everything that you've done, apart from reading it, of course, is to talk about it, review it, rant about it. When you start talking about what you like and dislike in a book, all these opinions that you never even thought of initially are just going to flood in. And with it, ideas on how to implement these into your own novel. Maybe you'll get a couple of scenes. Maybe you'll get a whole new way to revamp your plot or your climax or your hook. A few little quick tips. One of the best ways I've found is to read your book twice, especially if it's a book you haven't read before. That way the first time you read it, you can enjoy it as a reader. And then if you've happened to pick up on anything that you like or dislike in the book, go back, read it again. Take your time. There are so many readers out there who read for the sake of reading. I've read 12 books this month. Yay me! And while that's a fabulous thing, sometimes it doesn't let you really sit down and process and enjoy what you've just read because you're straight on to the next book. So try not to read the book and take the notes in a day. Maybe do a couple of chapters. Resist the urge to, but just one more chapter. The slower you read, the more you focus, the more detail you're going to get, and the more easier it will be for you to take those ideas and figure out a way to use them yourself. And read it out loud. If there's a particular scene in the book that has you hooked, take your time, take a breath, and read it out loud. That way you can orderly? Is orderly a word? That way you can hear the words, and that can help you analyse it a bit better. You can hear the beats that the author has written. You can better hear the flow of the sentences, and it will help you figure out what it is that they do that makes that scene so great, that gives you that tension, that gives you the lyrical, beautiful flow of the words, the setting that grabs you and won't let you go. Writing is the best way for you to improve your skill as a writer, but reading comes in a close second. And the more you read like a writer, the easier it will be for you to absorb all the information and figure out a way for you to implement it and use it in your own writing. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Good thoughts and happy writing. Oh no, I'm just saying the same things over and over and over again.